The sting across my cheek came so fast, I didn't see his hand move. One moment I was standing in my kitchen, the next I was stumbling backward against the counter, my face burning with pain. Jack towered over me, his chest heaving with rage, his eyes wild with an anger I had never seen before. "I said sell the damn house, Mom," he shouted, his voice echoing off the walls Edward had built with his own hands. My hand touched my cheek where my own son had just struck me. 43 years I had raised him, loved him, sacrificed everything for him. And this was what I got in return. The house Edward and I had built together, the home where we had raised Jack, where every corner held a precious memory of my late husband. Jack wanted me to sell it like it meant nothing. My eyes filled with tears, but not from the physical pain. From the devastating realization that I no longer knew the man standing before me. This stranger with Jack's face was someone I had never imagined my son could become. 3 days earlier, everything had seemed perfectly normal. Jack had called asking to come over for dinner, and I had been absolutely thrilled by his invitation. Since his father passed away 5 years ago, Jack's visits had become less and less frequent. He was always busy with his tech startup company, always chasing the next big business deal, always too occupied to spend time with his aging mother. I had spent the entire afternoon cooking his favorite meal, pot roast with Edward's special gravy recipe that he had loved since childhood. When Jack finally arrived, he barely touched the food I had prepared. He kept checking his phone constantly, his leg bouncing nervously under the table, clearly distracted by something. "Mom, we need to talk about something really important," he finally said, pushing his plate away with food still on it. I smiled warmly, expecting good news about a promotion or maybe even news about a girlfriend. Instead, he said something that made my blood run cold. "This house is worth a fortune now. The neighborhood's been rezoned for commercial development. Developers are paying top dollar for properties like this." I had stared at him in complete confusion, not understanding where this conversation was heading. "Jack, this is my home. Why would I ever want to sell it?" I asked, genuinely puzzled by his statement. He leaned forward across the table, his eyes intense and focused in a way that made me uncomfortable. "Because I need the money desperately, Mom. My company is at a critical stage right now. We need serious capital for expansion, and this house could give us exactly what we need to take the business to the next level." The way he said us made my stomach turn with unease. There was no us in this equation at all. This was entirely about him and his business ambitions, not about me or my needs or my life. "Your father built this house with his own 2 hands, I said quietly, trying to make him understand. "Every single board, every nail, every detail. This is all I have left of him in this world." Jack's jaw tightened visibly, and I could see frustration building in his expression. "Dad's been dead for 5 years now, Mom. You're living in the past. It's just a house, just wood and nails. Nothing more. Just a house." Those 3 words echoed in my head for hours and hours after Jack left that night in anger. How could he not understand what this place meant to me? This wasn't just walls and a roof over my head. This was where Edward had carried me over the threshold 42 years ago as newlyweds, both of us laughing and full of dreams. This was where Jack took his very first wobbly steps in the hallway, his tiny hands reaching for me. This was where Edward and I had danced in the kitchen on our anniversary every year, his strong arms wrapped around me as the radio played our special song. I walked through each room that night, unable to sleep, touching the door frames Edward had carved by hand, running my fingers over the mantel he had built during our first winter here. In the bedroom, I opened the closet and pressed my face against Edward's old flannel shirt that still hung there after all these years. It didn't smell like him anymore. Time had erased that, but I couldn't bear to remove it. It was like removing another piece of him from my life. Jack returned 2 days later, and this time he wasn't alone at all. He brought a real estate agent with him, a sharp-looking woman in an expensive designer suit who immediately started walking through my home, pointing out the house's selling features to Jack as if I wasn't even there. Hardwood floors throughout, original craftsman details, quarter-acre lot in a prime location near the new development zone, she rattled off mechanically, walking through my home like she already owned it, like my life here meant absolutely nothing. I stood in the doorway, my arms crossed tightly over my chest, feeling violated by this intrusion. "I didn't agree to this meeting," I said to Jack firmly, trying to keep my voice steady. He completely ignored me, following the agent from room to room, nodding as she pointed out features and potential. When they finished their tour of my entire house, she handed me a glossy folder with professional photos. "Conservative estimate puts the value at $800,000. In this market, we could easily get $900,000, maybe even $1 million with the right buyers." My hands shook as I pushed the folder back toward her, refusing to even look at it. "I'm not selling this house," I said as firmly as I could manage, my voice stronger than I felt inside. The agent looked at Jack with obvious discomfort, then back at me, clearly sensing the family tension in the room. She seemed like she wanted to disappear. "I'll wait in the car," she said awkwardly, gathering her things quickly and practically running out the door to escape. The moment the door closed behind her, Jack absolutely exploded with rage. "Are you completely insane, Mom? Do you have any idea what I could do with that kind of money? Do you know how many people would kill for an opportunity like this?" he shouted, his face turning red. I took a step backward, genuinely shocked by the fury in his voice and his aggressive stance. "This is my home, Jack. I'm not leaving it. Not now, not ever," I said, standing my ground despite my fear. He moved closer to me, invading my space, his face now bright red with anger. "You're being incredibly selfish. I'm your son, your only child. Dad would have wanted you to help me build my future." The mention of Edward made my blood boil with anger. "Don't you dare speak for your father," I said through clenched teeth. Edward would have been absolutely heartbroken to see what Jack had become over these past years. My husband had been a carpenter, a humble man who believed in building things with his own hands, in working hard and living honestly and treating people with respect. He had tried so hard to teach Jack those same values throughout his childhood, but somewhere along the way, they just hadn't stuck with our son. After Edward died suddenly from a heart attack, Jack had started changing in ways I didn't recognize. He quit his stable job as an engineer to start his risky tech company. He borrowed money from friends and family members, always promising big returns that never, ever materialized. He stopped visiting except when he needed something from me, usually money. And now he wanted the house itself, the very foundation of everything Edward had worked so hard to build for our family. I looked at my son standing there and saw a complete stranger wearing his face. "The answer is no, Jack. It will always be no," I said with finality. That's when everything changed forever. That's when he raised his hand and slapped me hard across my face. Now, 3 days after that terrible moment that changed everything between us, I sat nervously in my lawyer's office, my cheeks still slightly bruised despite the careful makeup I had applied that morning to try to hide it. Victor Ramsey had handled Edward's will and all our estate planning for over 20 years. He was in his mid-60s now, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and a gentle manner that had always put me at ease. "Martha, I'm so incredibly sorry this is happening to you," he said softly, studying the documents I had brought with shaking hands. "But I need to ask you a difficult question. Do you want to press criminal charges for assault against your son?" I shook my head immediately, feeling tears spring to my eyes. Despite everything Jack had done, despite the violence and the greed, he was still my son. He was still the little boy I had rocked to sleep. "I just want to make absolutely sure he can't force me to sell the house," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Victor nodded slowly, understanding my complicated feelings. "The house is solely in your name, Martha. Edward left it to you outright in his will. Jack has no legal claim to it whatsoever." Relief washed over me like a wave, and I felt myself relax slightly in the leather chair. But Victor's expression remained deeply serious, which immediately made me tense up again. "However, there's something very important you should know about Martha. I did some checking after you called me yesterday. Jack filed a legal petition 2 days ago claiming you're mentally incompetent to manage your own affairs. He's seeking full guardianship over you." The words hit me like another slap across my face. "He's what?" I gasped, unable to believe what I was hearing. Victor pulled out more papers from his desk drawer, spreading them before me. He's claiming that you're showing clear signs of dementia and Alzheimer's, that you're not capable of making sound financial decisions anymore. If a judge grants this petition, Jack would have complete legal control over all your assets, including the house, your savings, everything you own. My hands gripped the armrests of my chair, so tightly my knuckles turned white. This wasn't just about the house anymore at all. Jack was trying to take away my entire life, my freedom, my independence, my dignity. What do I do now? I whispered, feeling terrified and helpless. Victor leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled thoughtfully under his chin. We fight back, Martha. And we fight hard and smart. I'll need you to undergo a full cognitive evaluation from an independent psychiatrist as soon as possible. We'll document everything carefully, the assault, his clear financial motivations, his history of borrowing money and not paying it back. We build a strong case showing that he's the one acting irrationally, not you at all. Over the next week, I went through what felt like an endless battery of tests at the medical center. Memory assessments, problem-solving exercises, psychological evaluations, physical examinations. The psychiatrist, a kind woman named Dr. Hayes, was thorough but gentle with me throughout the process. Mrs. Turner, I can tell you right now, even before I write my formal report, that you're sharp as a tack, she said warmly after our final session together. Your cognitive function is excellent for someone your age. Better than excellent, actually. You're in the top percentile for your demographic. But would that be enough to stop Jack and his schemes? I had raised him, loved him unconditionally, given him everything I possibly could. And now he was trying to have me declared legally incompetent. The betrayal cut deeper than anything I had ever experienced. The court hearing was officially scheduled for 3 weeks away. In the meantime, Jack launched an aggressive campaign to convince everyone in my life that I was losing my mind and needed help. He called my friends one by one, my neighbors, even my book club members who I had known for years. Have you noticed Mom forgetting things lately? He would ask them with fake concern. She seems really confused these days, doesn't she? I'm worried about her living alone. My best friend Gloria came over one afternoon, her face troubled and uncertain. Martha, Jack called me yesterday out of the blue. He said you left the stove on and almost burned the entire house down. He said you didn't even remember doing it. Is that true? She asked gently. I shook my head firmly, anger building like fire in my chest. I haven't used the stove in days except to make tea, Gloria. He's lying deliberately. He's making up stories to make me look incompetent. She squeezed my hand tightly, her eyes full of sympathy. I know, honey. I didn't believe him for a second. But Martha, he's telling this story to absolutely everyone who knows you. I realized quickly that I needed to be proactive and strategic about defending myself. I started documenting absolutely everything in my daily life. I kept a detailed journal of my activities, what I ate, where I went, who I talked to. I saved every single receipt showing my purchases and errands, proving I was functioning normally. I took photos of myself at various locations around town with timestamps clearly visible. I was building my own case, creating evidence proving that I was perfectly capable of managing my life independently. Victor was genuinely impressed when I showed him my careful documentation during our next meeting. This is excellent work, Martha. It shows clear, rational thinking and planning. This is exactly what we need, he said, flipping through my organized notebooks. But he also had troubling news that made my stomach sink. Jack has hired a lawyer for the hearing. A very good one with an excellent track record. They're going to fight hard at this hearing to get guardianship. I met his eyes steadily, feeling determination replace my fear. Then we fight harder than they do. Something had awakened deep inside me since that slap. A strength I didn't know I possessed was rising to the surface. One evening about a week before the hearing, my doorbell rang unexpectedly. I looked through the peephole cautiously and saw a woman I didn't recognize standing on my porch. She was in her mid-30s, professionally dressed in a business suit, carrying a leather briefcase. I opened the door carefully, keeping the chain lock attached. Mrs. Turner? My name is Amanda Pierce. I'm a licensed private investigator. "I think we need to talk about your son, Jack, right away," she said, showing me her credentials through the gap. I let her in hesitantly, my heart pounding with anxiety about what she might tell me. Amanda sat in my living room and opened her briefcase professionally. "I've been investigating Jack Turner for the past 6 months on behalf of several investors in his tech company. They hired me because they believe he's been systematically misusing their funds." She spread out documents on my coffee table carefully. Bank statements, emails, financial records, all showing a pattern of deception. "Your son has been funneling money from his business into personal accounts illegally. He's facing potential fraud charges that could result in serious prison time." I stared at the papers spread across my coffee table, my hands trembling uncontrollably. "Why are you telling me all this?" I asked, not understanding why she would come to me. Amanda's expression was genuinely sympathetic as she looked at me. "Because I believe his attempt to gain control of your assets through guardianship is part of a much larger pattern of financial desperation. If he gets guardianship over you, he'll have immediate legal access to your house, your savings, everything you own. And based on everything I've seen in my investigation, he'll drain it all trying to save his failing company and cover up his crimes." She paused, letting that sink in before continuing. "I'm willing to testify at your hearing about what I've discovered. But I need your explicit permission to share this confidential information with your lawyer and the court." I thought about the little boy who used to climb into my lap when he was scared of thunderstorms. The teenager who had cried in my arms when he didn't make the basketball team. Where had that boy gone? What had happened to him? "Yes," I said firmly. "Do whatever you need to do to stop him." Victor was absolutely ecstatic when he met with Amanda and reviewed her investigation files. "This changes everything completely, Martha. Jack's not just trying to take advantage of you, he's actively committing fraud and potentially other crimes. His credibility as a petitioner will be completely destroyed when this comes out in court." The hearing was now less than 2 weeks away. Jack had stopped calling me directly, but I could feel his presence like a dark shadow constantly over my life. He was out there somewhere plotting, planning, trying to figure out how to take everything from me. One night when I couldn't sleep at all, I went downstairs quietly and sat in Edward's workshop in the garage. He had spent countless peaceful hours here, building furniture, fixing things around the house, just creating with his hands. His tools still hung neatly on the pegboard, organized exactly as he had left them 5 years ago. I picked up his favorite hammer, the wooden handle worn smooth and warm from years of constant use. "I miss you so much, Edward," I whispered into the darkness of the garage. "I wish you were here to help me fight this battle." But Edward wasn't here anymore, and I had to fight this battle completely alone. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in several years. I drove to the peaceful cemetery where Edward was buried under an old oak tree. I brought fresh flowers, his favorite yellow roses, and sat on the stone bench beside his headstone. "Our son is trying to take the house away from me," I told him, tears streaming down my face. "The house you built for us with your own hands. I don't know how we got here, Edward. I don't know where I went wrong raising him. What did I do wrong?" The wind rustled gently through the trees, and I felt a strange sense of peace wash over me despite my tears. Edward would have told me to stand strong, to fight for what was rightfully mine. He would have reminded me that the house wasn't just about preserving memories, it was about principle. About not letting anyone, even our own son, take advantage of me or push me around. I stayed there for over an hour, just talking to Edward, drawing strength from his memory. The week before the hearing, Jack made one final desperate attempt to contact me directly. He left a long voicemail on my phone. "Mom, I know things got completely out of hand. I shouldn't have hit you like that. I'm really sorry about that part. But you need to understand something, I'm desperate here. The company is absolutely everything to me. If it fails, I lose everything I've worked for. Just sell the house and give me the money I need. We can split it 50-50, I promise. You can buy yourself a nice condo somewhere, maybe closer to shopping. Please, Mom. I'm begging you on my knees." I listened to the message 3 times, analyzing every word carefully. There was no real apology there at all, just manipulation and lies. He was sorry he hit me, but only because it had negative consequences for him. He still wanted the house desperately. He still saw me as nothing more than a convenient source of money. He hadn't changed at all. I deleted the message permanently and blocked his number on my phone. I was done giving him chances to hurt me. The day of the hearing finally arrived, and I felt surprisingly calm. I dressed carefully in a navy suit Edward had always loved seeing me wear. I did my makeup carefully to cover the last faint traces of the bruise on my cheek. Victor picked me up early, and we drove to the courthouse together in silence. "Remember what we practiced," he coached me gently on the way. "Answer all questions clearly and directly. Don't let Jack's lawyer rattle you or make you emotional. You're competent, you're clear-minded, and you have every legal right to keep your home." In the courtroom, I saw Jack for the first time since he had hit me that terrible day. He sat at the other table with his lawyer, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit who was shuffling papers. Jack wouldn't meet my eyes at all. Good, I thought. I didn't want to see his face anyway. The judge entered promptly, a stern-looking woman in her 50s, named Judge Morrison. "Let's proceed," she said firmly, looking at both parties. Jack's lawyer went first, painting a detailed picture of a confused, elderly woman who couldn't manage her own affairs anymore. He called a neighbor named Mrs. Chun who testified that she had seen me, wandering around confused, in my yard late at night in my nightgown. What she had actually seen was me stargazing in my robe, something Edward and I had done together for years under the stars. He called Jack to the stand, who testified tearfully about his deep concerns for my safety and well-being. "I just want what's best for my mother. I love her so much. She raised me, and now I want to take care of her," Jack said, his voice breaking convincingly with emotion. I wanted to stand up and scream at his lies, to tell everyone what a manipulator he was. Then it was Victor's turn to present our case. He called Dr. Hayes first, who testified professionally that my cognitive function was excellent, better than most people my age. He presented my detailed documentation showing my daily activities and clear thinking patterns. He called Gloria, who testified that I was perfectly capable and that Jack had been spreading false, malicious rumors about me deliberately. Then Victor called Amanda Pierce to the stand. The courtroom went completely silent as she laid out her detailed findings about Jack's business. The misused funds, the desperate financial situation, the ongoing fraud investigation. Jack's face went deathly pale as she spoke. His lawyer objected repeatedly, jumping up from his seat. But Judge Morrison allowed the testimony to continue. "This goes directly to the petitioner's credibility and motivations," she ruled firmly, overruling the objections. Finally, Victor called me to the stand. I walked up calmly, placed my hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth, the whole truth. Victor led me through my testimony gently. I explained about the house, about Edward building it with his own hands, about Jack's increasing demands that I sell. "And what happened when you refused his demands?" Victor asked gently. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. He hit me hard across my face. A murmur went through the courtroom like a wave. I pulled out my phone and showed the photos I had taken of my bruised, swollen cheek the day after. My own son struck me because I wouldn't give him what he wanted. Jack's lawyer tried desperately to recover during cross-examination, attacking me aggressively. "Mrs. Turner, isn't it true that you're emotionally attached to the house in an extremely unhealthy way? That you're unable to think rationally about its monetary value?" he asked sharply. I looked at him very calmly, keeping my composure. "Sir, I'm emotionally attached to my home in exactly the same way anyone would be after living there for 42 years of their life. That doesn't make me incompetent at all. It makes me human." He tried a different angle, getting more aggressive. "Isn't it true that you're all alone in that big house? That it would be much better for you to live somewhere smaller, somewhere with people your own age to socialize with?" I smiled slightly, feeling confident. "I appreciate your concern for my well-being, but I'm perfectly capable of maintaining my home. I have close friends, I have activities, I have a full and meaningful life. The size of my house doesn't determine my mental competency in any way." His questions continued, but I answered each one calmly and rationally, never getting flustered. Judge Morrison called for a brief recess to review all the evidence. Victor and I sat in the hallway, not speaking, both lost in our own thoughts. We had done absolutely everything we could. Now it was completely in the judge's hands. After 30 long minutes, we were called back into the courtroom. Judge Morrison looked directly at Jack with an expression of barely concealed disgust on her face. "Mr. Turner, I've carefully reviewed all the evidence and testimony presented today. I find absolutely no basis whatsoever for declaring your mother incompetent. In fact, the evidence strongly suggests that you are the one acting irrationally and perhaps criminally. Your petition is completely denied." Relief flooded through my entire body like warm water. But the judge wasn't finished speaking. "Furthermore, I'm ordering you to stay at least 500 feet away from your mother at all times. Any violation of this order will result in your immediate arrest. Do you clearly understand?" Jack nodded, his face a twisted mask of fury and humiliation. He looked like he wanted to say something, but knew better. His lawyer put a restraining hand on his arm. Outside the courthouse, Victor hugged me tightly. "You did it, Martha. You actually won against all odds," he said proudly. But the victory felt surprisingly hollow despite my relief. Yes, I had kept my house and my independence and my dignity, but I had lost my son completely in the process. Jack had driven away, without even looking back once. I stood on the courthouse steps, feeling the weight of everything that had happened over these months. That evening, I returned to my empty house alone. I walked slowly through each familiar room, touching the walls Edward had built so carefully, feeling their solidity beneath my palms. This house was mine. It would always be mine now. No one could ever take it from me again. I made myself a simple dinner and sat at the kitchen table where Jack and I had eaten countless meals together throughout his childhood. The chair across from me was empty now, just empty space. I wondered if it would ever be filled again by him. Part of me hoped it would. Part of me wasn't sure. 3 months later, I heard through Gloria that Jack's company had gone completely bankrupt. The fraud investigation had led to serious criminal charges being filed. He was facing possible jail time if convicted. Part of me felt vindicated by this news. Part of me just felt incredibly sad for the son I had lost. I had tried to reach out to him once, sending a heartfelt letter to his apartment address. I told him honestly that I forgave him for hitting me, but that I couldn't have any relationship with him unless he took full responsibility for his actions and got help. He never responded to my letter. I started going to therapy weekly, working through the complicated grief of losing my son while he was still alive somewhere in the world. "You did the right thing by setting boundaries," my therapist told me repeatedly. Setting boundaries isn't the same thing as abandonment at all. But some days it felt exactly like abandonment. Some days I lay awake wondering if I should have just given him the money and avoided all this pain and loss. My therapist reminded me that wouldn't have solved anything. 1 year after the hearing, I was working peacefully in my garden when a car pulled slowly into my driveway. My heart stopped when I saw Jack get out carefully. He looked thinner, older, worn down by life. He walked up slowly, stopping several feet away to respect the restraining order that had expired last month. "Mom," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve your forgiveness at all. But I need you to know that I'm truly sorry. Really, genuinely sorry. Not for getting caught, not for losing. Sorry for what I did to you, for who I became." I stood up slowly, brushing dirt from my gardening gloves. "We could talk," I said carefully, not ready to commit to more. "If you're ready to talk honestly without lies." He nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I'd like that more than anything. I'm in therapy now. I'm trying to become better." As I watched him drive away, I felt something shift inside me. Maybe there was hope. Maybe we could rebuild something, not what we had before, but something new based on honesty. I looked back at my house, standing solid after everything. This would always be my sanctuary, the place where I learned that sometimes love means refusing to be destroyed.